The wind howled across the empty plains, carrying with it the scent of dust and rain. The small town of Willow Creek was quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that settled deep into the bones of those who had lived there long enough to know its rhythm. At the far edge of town, beyond the saloon and the church, past the fields where wildflowers struggled to bloom, stood a ranch that seemed both proud and weary. Its fences leaned like tired men, its barns sagged under the weight of storms past, but its heart, the house where two little girls waited for their father, beat strong. That house belonged to Caleb Turner, a widowed cowboy who had buried his young wife 3 winters ago. Since then, life had been harder than any trail he'd ever ridden. Caleb was not the kind of man to complain. He rose before dawn, worked the land, tended to cattle, and then returned home to brush his daughter's hair and tuck them into bed. But anyone who had looked into his eyes could see that grief had carved a hollow there. His girls, Anna and Grace, only 6 and 8, often whispered in hushed voices, asking when Mama would come back. Caleb never lied, he told them she was with God now, watching them from the stars. But every night he prayed for strength, because raising 2 daughters alone in a town that judged every weakness was more than a man should have to carry. On the opposite side of that town lived someone else who carried a heavy burden, though hers was of a different kind. Her name was Lily May, and everyone called her the Outcast bride. She had been married once, briefly, to a man who turned cruel the moment the vows were spoken. He drank, he cursed, he raised his hand to her more times than she could count. One night, when his rage turned dangerous, Lily ran. She found refuge with her aunt for a time, but when gossip spread and her husband abandoned her, leaving her with nothing but shame, the town turned its back. A failed wife, they called her. No good at keeping a man. She became a figure whispered about behind church pews and across store counters, the woman folks avoided, as if sorrow were contagious. Her husband eventually died in a bar fight 2 towns over, but by then Lily's reputation was already stained. She lived quietly, sewing dresses to survive, her eyes cast down whenever she walked the street. It was a storm that brought their paths together. One late evening, as rain hammered the earth and thunder rolled like God's own warning, Lily was stranded outside of town after delivering a garment. Her small cottage roof had caved under the storm, and with no family left to turn to, she found herself walking the muddy road, clutching a shawl around her shoulders. Caleb spotted her as he rode home from checking the herd. She looked like a ghost in the rain, fragile yet unbroken, moving forward because there was nowhere else to go. Without hesitation, he stopped his horse. "You'll catch your death out here," he said, his voice rough but not unkind. "Come with me." At first she refused. Pride, or maybe fear, made her shake her head. But the rain was merciless, and Caleb's steady gaze carried no judgment, only a quiet strength. So she accepted his hand, climbed onto his horse, and rode back with him through the storm. That night, in the warmth of his kitchen, Lily sat by the fire as Anna and Grace peeked at her from behind the stairs. They whispered to each other about the stranger with the sad eyes. Caleb handed her a cup of coffee and asked no questions, offering only the comfort of silence. And for the first time in years, Lily felt seen, not as a failure, not as gossip, but as a person. Over the days that followed, Lily helped around the ranch in small ways. She cooked meals, mended clothes, and showed Anna how to braid ribbons into her hair. Grace, who had become shy after her mother's death, began to smile again when Lily told her bedtime stories. The girls grew attached to her quickly, sensing something their father was too cautious to admit, that Lily carried the kind of gentleness they had been missing. Caleb noticed too. He saw how the girls ran to her, how her laughter filled the empty rooms, how her presence softened the sharp edges of grief. And though his heart still ached for his late wife, something inside him stirred, something he had long buried, the belief that healing was possible. But Willow Creek was not kind. When folks learned that Lily was staying at the Turner Ranch, whispers spread like wildfire. The townspeople muttered about scandal, about Caleb bringing shame upon his family by housing a fallen woman. At the general store, Lily heard the words hissed behind her back. She'll ruin that man. She ain't fit to be around his girls. The weight of it nearly crushed her. One evening, she tried to leave, packing her small bag in the dark. But Caleb stopped her at the door. "You've done nothing wrong," he said firmly, his voice low with conviction. "Don't let their lies steal your dignity. My girls need you. And truth be told, so do I." It was then, under the quiet hum of the lantern, that Caleb spoke the words that changed everything. "Lily May," he said, his hands rough from years of work trembling slightly, "I need a mother for my girls, and you need shelter. I can't promise riches or an easy life, but I can promise respect. I can promise kindness. Marry me, not for the town, not for appearances, but because together we might make something whole out of what's been broken." Lily's breath caught. No man had ever spoken to her with such honesty. Her first marriage had been chains, this proposal was freedom. But fear gripped her. "The town will never accept me," she whispered. Caleb shook his head. "Then let them talk. My girls will have laughter in their home again. You'll have a place where no one can cast you out. That's all that matters." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at him, at the man who offered not pity but partnership. And for the first time since her life had shattered, she felt hope rise within her. Their wedding was simple, held beneath the open sky with only a handful of friends who believed in second chances. The girls clung to Lily's hands, beaming brighter than the sun, while Caleb stood tall beside her, his quiet strength anchoring her trembling heart. When the preacher asked if she would take this man, Lily's voice shook, but she answered with a steady, "I will." In that moment, the gossip of the town fell away like dust in the wind. What mattered was the family they were building. Life on the ranch was not easy. There were still storms to weather, fences to mend, mouths to feed. The town's judgment did not vanish overnight. But inside that house, warmth grew. Lily taught Anna and Grace to sew, to dance barefoot in the grass, to believe that love could heal even the deepest wounds. Caleb, once a man hollowed by loss, found himself smiling more, laughter spilling out where silence once lingered. At night, when he tucked his daughters in and saw them sleeping peacefully, he whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, for the woman who had been brave enough to stay. One summer evening, as the family sat on the porch watching fireflies spark against the dark, Anna turned to Lily and asked, "Will you be our mama forever?" Lily's throat tightened, her hand trembling as she reached for the child's. "Forever," she promised, her voice breaking with both love and relief. Caleb placed his hand over hers, sealing the vow not just with words but with the life they had built together. In that moment, the scars of the past no longer defined them. They were a family, born not of perfection, but of courage, compassion, and the belief that broken people could make something beautiful when they chose love. And so, the widower cowboy and the outcast bride wrote a new story in the heart of Willow Creek. A story that whispered to anyone who cared to listen, kindness is stronger than judgment, love is greater than shame, and sometimes the most unexpected unions carry the power to heal what once seemed beyond repair.